So I just got a quick intro. Roger Oakey, W3MIX, is a resident of Colorado Springs, Colorado. He has a computer science degree from California Polytechnic State University at San Luis Obispo. He spent close to 40 years as a software engineer for Hewlett Packard. He's now self-employed as the president of Resilient DevOps Corporation. Roger first licensed as a technician in 2006. He earned general in 2021 and mixer in 2023. He's an NRA instructor, coach, and range safety officer. He enjoys competitive shooting, unicycling, and cave diving. His call sign, W3MIX, comes from the trimix used in scuba diving. The Deep Space Exploration Society is headquartered in Colorado Springs and operates at their location in Haswell, Colorado, which is rural southeastern Colorado. And without further ado, I'm going to give it away to Roger.
First, I'd like to take care of a little bit of overhead here. And of course, let's see. And I suddenly can't change slides. There we go. If you're on Zoom, if you could make sure your video and audio is muted. That way I can hog all the bandwidth here for the slides. And this next slide I'll just leave up for a moment because Adam already covered most of this here and more. The kind of the key takeaway here is that I'm kind of an infrastructure guy. I'm not a big, amateur radio contest or anything like that. So I kind of got involved in the Deep Space Exploration Society because they have a lot of work to do down there. And so I'm kind of enjoying fixing things and maintaining things and installing things as the need be. I joined DSES in 2022, so I'm a relatively new member to DSES. And by the way, most of these slides that have a lot of text on them, what I'll do is I'll just kind of pause and let you read them, and I'll give you a few amplifying comments, but I'm not going to just read the slide for you, since all of you have at least passed a technician license, so I know you all know how to read, and I won't be redundant. This is a picture of me, just real quick, at the what we call the hub of our telescope. It is behind the feed for the telescope, and this box that's sitting in the hub, I'll actually touch on a little bit later in the presentation. So to talk a little bit about what I'm going to talk about, this slide set that I'm going to present is actually was originally from Bill Miller, who created it for the Society of Amateur Radio Astronomers that had a conference in New Mexico probably about 3 weeks ago or so. And I took Bill's slide set and heavily plagiarized it and created something that's a little bit more focused toward amateur radio people rather than a lot of scientists. But I am going to touch, just to kind of give you an idea of our entire organization here. I'll talk a lot about the history behind our organization, a bit about amateur radio astronomy, amateur radio, and then our STEM education and outreach, as well as one of our projects that we just recently worked on. Again, I'll let you read. So what's kind of interesting about this organization is that we're kind of bipolar. We've got two large groups that, one of them are amateur radio people that are interested in using the dish and the site actually for amateur radio activities. And we also have a bunch of radio astronomers who use the dish for radio astronomy and various experiments, as well as there are a number of other experiments that are on site. And so we're an organization that's really organized around a device. kind of interesting. So this is our 60-foot dish antenna that is way out on the eastern plains of Colorado in a town called Haswell, Colorado. And while I'm here, let's see. Can you see, I don't seem to be able to get the laser to work, but can you see this little pencil? Hello?
Yeah, it's real small, Roger, but we see it.
Okay, thank you, Bill. By the way, Bill Miller, who's listening in on this, is the vice president of DSES, and he's making sure that I don't go off track here. But I'll be talking about our control room here, and a little bit about our old control room, which is this trailer over here. And if you notice, Bill's car is parked here. This telescope, when it's in its what we call the bird bath position, is the best shade tree within miles around. Otherwise, it's flat as a pancake out here. So just exactly where is Haswell, Colorado? Well, Colorado is one of these complex shaped states out west. And we kind of have mountains running down the middle of the state, but off to the east there, it becomes just very flat plains. And so right out in the middle of all these flat plains is this radio telescope. And first, what I'm going to do is talk about kind of the history of how this telescope ended up being, or the radio telescope ended up being in the far eastern plains of Colorado. So what a lot of this text boils down to is that the military during the 1950s was trying to figure out how to get reliable over the horizon communication. And this was one of their experiments, was trying to use what's called tropospheric scatter to be able to reach beyond the horizon. And they were trying to see how reliable this would be, because of course, back in the late 1950s, about the only thing that had gotten up there was Sputnik 1. And so the telecommunication satellites and all that we know and love today were not up there at that point in time, as well as the fiber optics that we have today. Though I think fiber optics has been in the news lately, that there's a pretty low tech method to kind of compromise the fiber optics, unfortunately. But I'd also like to point out that there used to be more than just these two sites. So there's one site that still exists with these two telescopes in Boulder, Colorado, and the lower picture is our, quote unquote, our telescope. Actually, not quote unquote, but it is our telescope in Haswell. So to speak to tropospheric scatter just a little bit here, over on the far left, you've got T1, and over on the far right, you have T2, these two stations that are over the horizon. And the idea is that you would have a relay of radio telescopes that would both receive and then retransmit signals. As amateur radio operators, you can communicate over the horizon with HF, but you can't reliably communicate over the horizon. You can't pick when and where you can talk to someone. So this was an experiment. They built these telescopes in order to see if this could be a reliable network that they could communicate over the horizon. Of course, telecommunication satellites came along, and by the 1970s became the preferred method of communication over the horizon. So, I'll let you read this for a moment. So though there were a number of these radio telescopes scattered around the United States, by the 1970s, as the communication satellites became the preferred method of communicating over the horizon, all the sites were basically scrapped and put up for auction. All the sites except for Boulder, which is still government owned. The Boulder site is actually on NIST, the National Institute of Standards and Technology. It's on the NIST site. Our site was bought by Paul Plishner, and who had some grand dreams of using it, but eventually, he realized that he couldn't really utilize it very much, and so it lay dormant till about 2007. But and the other radio telescopes that were out there, once the sites were sold at government auction, they were scrapped. There was an awful lot of really good aluminum in the telescopes, which were cut up and then sold for scrap. But this is our site during its heyday, during the early 70s. Boy, there's a 500-foot tower there that unfortunately is no longer there. But you can see our telescope off to the left. There's also a power substation there just to the right of the tower that is no longer there. And if you hold on, I have my water right next to me. Just a moment. So that's a brief history of our telescope. And now let's talk a little bit about DSES, the Deep Space Exploration Society. So I'll let you read this for a moment. So the DSES, I kind of think got kind of bootstrapped by the fact that they had antennas so close to a major metropolitan area, which was Denver and Boulder. They had easy access to the antennas. They started working with them. They gained a lot of experience with those twin antennas. But then 9/11 came along. It was on government property, and so it was the access was restricted. There were a number of DSE members that had already known about the Haswell site, and in fact had tried to buy it a few years earlier, but unsuccessfully bid against Mr. Plishner. But when they found out that the telescope was still there, they approached Mr. Plishner, and he agreed to allow the DSES to use the Haswell site. So after we worked on the site for about a year, I say we, but I am standing on the shoulders of giants. There are a number of members that are still in the club that were the original members, but most of the work and all that is now being done by the so-called descendants of those original members. But Michael Lowe, the president at the time, asked Mr. Plishner if he would donate the telescope, and sure enough, he did. So we call the area, call the site the Paul Plishner Radio Astronomy and Space Sciences Center. And though Mr. Plishner passed away in 2016, we continue to honor him because of the with the name. I'd also like to point out that for such an incredible piece of equipment that we've got on our property, it's amazing that this organization does own it outright. We own both the property and the site, the property and the telescope and all the buildings that are on the site outright. So, fortunately we can't, or fortunately for us, we can't have the rug pulled away out from underneath us like it was when 9/11 happened and we lost access to those two telescopes on the NIST site. So let's talk about our radio telescope a little bit. We use it mostly in the 400 to 2 gigahertz range, which is our lower end pulsars up to the hydrogen line, and a little bit beyond that. We are looking at going higher than that. Its diameter is 60 feet. Its estimated weight, we haven't thrown it on a scale yet, but its estimated weight is 65 tons. 42 dBi at 1 gigahertz. We've got, the amplification on this is incredible. At the lower frequencies, we do have a larger beam width than at the higher frequencies. So when we do moon bounce, EME, for example, we're running at 1.2 gigahertz. So we have a 0.8 degree cone that we are transmitting, and which the moon fits well within. We can drive it to basically look at anything in our hemisphere that we can see above. Very slow slew rate, 40 degrees per minute. So it takes a full 9 minutes to turn 360 degrees. I like to say that it's slower than a Zamboni. We'll skip through some of the technical stuff here, but the thing is incredibly accurate. You know, when you're building for the government, you spare no taxpayer expense, and this thing is extremely strong. It distorts very little at even at high winds. Give you an idea, here's a picture. It's strong enough to walk around on. There's an access door, as you can see there. And if you look at the right-hand picture, what the thing is built like a brick, let's call it an outhouse. It has a huge superstructure underneath it that keeps it extremely rigid. At the lower left picture here is Ray, one of our members, adjusting one of the legs. Actually, I have a closer picture or closer up picture of that adjustment method, but we can adjust where the focal point is and make sure that we keep that dead center on the telescope itself. Let's see. Oh, and also in the right picture, you can see kind of the end of the elevation axle there. That elevation axle is 2 feet across. Again, this thing was built, and thank goodness it was built so ruggedly and mostly out of the superstructure out of aluminum, because it did weather since the late 1950s to today just fine. And the DSES was able to get this thing moving. We redid the motor drives. We kind of, we don't use the original motor drives that were in it, but we retrofitted some other drives to drive the azimuth and elevation of the radio telescope. So last year, we actually completed a new building on site. On the left is our new control room and classroom, as well as there's a garage you can see way off there to the right. We contacted an organization called the Amateur Radio Digital, Bill, help me out here. Amateur Radio Digital Communication.
Communications group, yes.
Yep, communications group. And got a grant to build this building. In the grant, we called out that we wanted to be very active in STEM and outreach, which was very helpful for us to get that grant. And off to the right, you can see our old control room, which was a old communications trailer. And I have 1 or 2 pictures of inside the communication trailer to show you how much our digs improved when we moved from the trailer to the building itself. And that building has all the comforts of home. It has a full bathroom and shower, and a kitchen. So a number of our members, when we have like rather large projects going on, will actually stay overnight in the building, in the classroom. And usually there's one member that comes out from Chicago all the time, who's an incredible cook and keeps us all very well fed while we're down there working on our projects. So it has made things much more comfortable and much more productive with the addition of this building. And so I've talked a little bit about the radio telescope and where we're controlling it from, this building here. So what are we using this for? Well, let's talk about radio astronomy first. I'll let you read this. So we have a number of radio astronomy projects going on down there right now. There's the E Callisto, actually. I haven't heard back, but supposedly the E Callisto project came online today. We'll see if they ran into any problems, but I haven't heard. There's a large work team that went down there today. There's hydrogen line mapping and pulsar logging. And these first two I'm going to briefly talk about. I know we're amateur radio folks, but I enjoy science, and so I'll briefly talk on about these first two projects that we work on. So there's a lot of neutral hydrogen floating around our galaxy, and the neutral hydrogen is simply hydrogen atoms. Most of the hydrogen that's here on Earth binds together into H2. The two hydrogen atoms are bonded together, but in space, these hydrogen atoms are not bonded together. And as a hydrogen atom that's floating out there, its electron, the one electron, every 10 million years or so, its electron flips and emits a photon at 1420 megahertz. Since photons and waves and frequency and all that are interchangeable, you can look at it as either energy or waves. But 10 million every 10 million years doesn't sound like a lot, but as Carl Sagan always used to say, when you have billions and billions of hydrogen atoms out there, you get a lot of quote unquote light, a lot of radio emissions from these hydrogen atoms. And this picture on the right shows you what our galaxy looks like from Earth's vantage point, of course. That bright line you see across the center is the disk of the galaxy. So looking through that disk, that's where a lot of the hydrogen is concentrated. And in the lower right, you see that one bright spot there. That's interesting. That's the Magellanic Clouds that are just outside of our galaxy. So they're probably prolific star producers at this point in time because they have a lot of neutral hydrogen around there, which of course gravitationally finally gathers together and becomes stars. By the way, I wish I could say that we had created this map, but the credit goes to Benjamin Winkle for creating this map of the galaxy with hydrogen. I'll also talk a little bit here about pulsar detection. So pulsars are just neutron stars that are, let's say, 10 miles in diameter or so. 10 to 12 miles in diameter. They started off as stars 1 million miles in diameter. So when they collapsed, it's kind of like a skater pulling in their arms. They speed up, so they spin very, very quickly. On the orders of milliseconds for a 10 or 12 mile diameter object. So we have gone to many of the already existing pulsars to make sure that we can quote unquote hear them. We can't actually hear them because they're below the noise floor, but statistically we can pull their signals out of the noise floor. The reason we're going for already existing pulsars is we're still kind of validating our equipment. We have a radio telescope, we have SDRs to receive these things. The question is can we do, hopefully as good a job as some of the professional observatories. So we are looking at a lot of these pulsars, making sure that we can detect them. And, once we have confidence, then we can, strike out on our own. We know that we have equipment that can do this, this kind of research. To talk a little bit about pulsars. So this animation up here is probably actually, I should see if, nope. Hold on here, I managed to wedge things. Okay, I won't do that again. um, so the pulsars, when they spin, if they're spinning on an axis such as that their radio emissions pass Earth, we can detect them. And I mentioned that we really can't hear them. But what we can do is we can gather the data over a period of time, and then statistically analyze the data by folding it, knowing the pulsar's period. We can fold all of the quote unquote noise that we hear and pull out the signal of the pulsar, as shown in kind of that last picture there. Again, the pulsars, it's not something you're going to be able to see on a waterfall or you're going to be able to hear, but once we crunch the numbers that are coming from typically an SDR that's listening to the frequency where we expect the pulsar to be, we can pull the data out. And what we end up with are charts like this. Now, I am just getting into this portion, so I ask you to be kind to me and not ask me any questions about these charts, but you can see in the, or any details about these charts, but you can see in the three, let's see, I've got a pointer here. You can kind of see the lines that are detected by, once we folded the information that are detected. These are 3 different pulsars we're looking at. You can see that the period of its rotation does come out of the data. And the color pictures that you see are just kind of a graphical way to show the information, to know how high your correlation is and how strong the signals are. So those are the once over lightlies I'm going to do for our science side. And now I'm going to talk a little bit about everything that's near and dear to our heart, which is our amateur radio projects. And I'm still having problems with something that's, here we go. Got it. I'm sorry, something was intruding on my screen here. So we have, or we do a number of experimental amateur radio projects. Of course, the dishes were set up originally for tropospheric scatter. We have done a number of moon bounce contests with our dish, since it works great at 1296, and we have so much gain in it. And not so much on the UHF and VHF radio. We do typically have those on when we're down there, in case people want to make contacts. And we're looking at some future projects. One of the things we're kind of looking at to see if it's possible is to see if we can receive some transmissions from one of the Voyager probes. So it's really tight given our gain, but we're still kind of running the numbers to see if this is a reasonable thing to try. I'm going to circle back to the moon bounce here a little bit later, and again, there we go. So we also have a full amateur radio station with a linear amplifier that resides down in of all things, we have a bunker on the property. It's where the people who originally ran the telescope would both live and operate from. And so right now our remotely operated amateur radio station is in this bunker, and we have a Yagi that can be driven driven remotely. Basically everything can be driven remotely, because Paul Saban, who donated all of this equipment, originally had a station set up as a remote station. Since he lived in a small apartment in downtown Denver that doesn't really support Yagis on the roof. So he had originally had this set up at his daughter's house, but then he donated it and moved it down to our site in Haswell because it's a very radio quiet site. Plus, if you're grid chasing, it's a very, very rare grid. There's nothing around there except corn and farm tractors. So so it supports all the high frequency and 6-meter bands. And as I said, it's all remotely operated. And by the way, if I know everyone probably growing up really wanted to have an underground bunker, a lair to live in, or to play around in. Well, we have a lair. So if you want to join an organization that has a lair, feel free to join our organization and come out to our site sometime. So I'm going to stop sharing and start sharing again because I don't think I enabled audio when I open this, and I want to play some audio. So just a moment here. We're going to jump out, share. Okay. Bill, am I back?
Yes, you are.
Okay. So probably about 5 years ago, we decided to start trying to do Earth, Moon, Earth, or moon bounce communications. And originally, one of our members, Ray Uberecken, built a 150 watt transmitter, and we did very well, especially given the size of our dish. But one of the things, we run an open house every year in the September-October timeframe. And when we run the open house, we make sure that the moon is up. And that's so we can actually use the equipment and at least bounce our signal off the moon for an echo. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play this. I'm going to play this. Sorry, a piece of equipment woke up here. I'm going to play this this recording actually 3 times because it's probably far quieter than I'm talking. So I'll play it 3 times so you can adjust your volume so you can hear it. And then I'll let you adjust your volume back down and I'll continue talking. So we'll see if this works.
Hi, this is Harper KVPRT.
Right there.
Off the moon, look at
Hi, this is Harper KVPRT.
Right there.
off the moon, look at
Whoops.
That was pretty good. It was pretty loud. I think everybody could hear it.
Hi, this is Harper KVPRT.
Right there.
off the moon, look at
Okay, and now I'll talk very quietly while you turn down your volume for me. So the fact that we successfully ran EME for several years, again, from the 150 watt original transmitter, we have a member who actually designs radios for NASA that built a 300 watt transmitter. So our signal got even stronger. And as he worked on that, he started thinking about, well, is there some place we could go beyond the moon? And we started talking about EVE, Earth-Venus-Earth communication. So we started looking at the path loss to Venus and back. I mean, one of the nice things about Venus is it's very reflective. So and after a heck of a lot of calculations and discussions and arguments and all that, we decided that it could be done with a 4.5 minute round trip. And so we started researching this. Actually, I'll let you go ahead and read this. So what's interesting about the Doppler is that, you know, we chose a time right now. Venus is getting ready to pass in front of the sun. So it's actually not moving relative to Earth very quickly. We're almost on the normal versus the tangent of Venus's orbit. So most of the Doppler change is because of the Earth's rotation. So it's actually very similar to communicating with the moon. But because of the amount of loss that we were going to have, we kind of decided to take this in kind of 4 steps, where we were just simply looking for a carrier. And then if that was successful, we'd move on to, you know, slow Morse code and then, you know, some of the digital modes. I'll pause again. So again, we approached the ADRC with this proposal and got some funding, and we then contacted. We needed dishes that could receive our signal, so we contacted a number of people with dishes, including the Park Radio Telescope down in Australia, but unfortunately they weren't available at the time. But there's a 25-meter dish in Stockert, and which is in Germany, and Dwingeloo, which is in the Netherlands. And I don't think we had Camp Evans participated in this, but so we, you know, created this cooperative relationship with them to see if they could receive us. Europe's power limits are lower than ours, so we knew that you know, they couldn't transmit to us, but we could try to transmit to them. Their power limits on that frequency is 400 watts, I believe, and that was just too much path loss for them to make that up. So this is the transmitter that we built. Actually, in the lower right-hand corner is Alex Nerzian, and he's the guy who contracts with NASA to build antennas and transmitters. And so this is the Eve box. And kind of briefly, let's see, we're going to bring and it looks like I've lost my pointer. Can you, whoops. Can you see the, I don't think you can see my pointer on the screen, so I'll just talk you through it. Looking at the lower left-hand corner, the fans that are on the outside of the unit are the power supplies. The fans that are kind of inside of the unit are the actually the amps that they can go up to about 1.5 or 1.2 kilowatts each. And above that is another amp, as well as a splitter. And briefly, the process we go through is and there's also a transmitter in that top box. So we actually transmit 6 meters from the control room to the feed, and that's to reduce loss up to the hub. The transducer then shifts 6 meters, 23 centimeters. The first amp lifts the signal to 300 watts, which is split into 2 90 degrees out of phase signals. Now the second amps then raise the power, you know, up to 1.2 kilowatts each, though we keep it lower than that to stay legal. And then finally, if you look at the top right-hand corner, there's on the left-hand side of the box, there's a heat sink with a fan. That's the combiner that reintegrates the 2 90-degree out of phase signals, which is what the splitter introduced, back into the final maximum of 1.5 kilowatts to the feed. And this is also the hardware that was pictured next to me in the in my original picture of my biographical picture at the beginning. So installing Eve on the dish, you may have seen like a scaffolding. We bring the telescope down to a maintenance position, and we haul the Eve unit up there, which weighs about 80 pounds, and through a cast of thousands, we wrestle that into the hub, and we have to have climbing climbing safety gear and everything on when we're up there at the hub, because we're above 30, well above 30 feet above the ground. So there's Alex in the top left again. We got a rubidium clock from Boulder University that he brought down, and we put him to work while he was there. And that's myself and Derek, kind of right after we had installed the Eve into the hub. So what were the results of Eve? Well, on March 22nd, this one I'll kind of read. We tried the bounce. Unfortunately, we didn't succeed. However, before Venus even rose for us, remember I told you that that the maximum wattage for Europe was 400 watts. Well, you can get a variance, and Stockart was able to get that variance like a day or two before the transmission, and before Venus had even rose for us. Dwingelo received the signal that Stockart was transmitting, so they were able to receive their carrier. And again, this is done very similar to the pulsar, the way we pull the pulsar information out, in that we kind of statistically look at what looks like noise, and we're able to determine that yes, there was actually a carrier transmission within that noise. So Dwingelo and Stockart now hold the claim to the first successful radio bounce. Even though we transmitted, they had problems. This equipment was, a lot of this equipment we had to really baby to get it to work, since it was its first time out in the field, and they had a failure on their end. However, no actual information or QSO hasn't actually been successfully done yet. So we have that as one of the goals. And what's interesting and disappointing is that 1.5 kilowatt power limit that we have in the US is likely to be reduced very soon because of conflicts with the satellite control for GPS satellites. And at that point, we'll look at higher bands to accomplish the remaining goals. So we've talked about the history, the radio astronomy, and amateur radio. We'll just talk a little bit about what we do in terms of STEM education and outreach. Again, I'll let you read. And that last bullet is something that you are now familiar with, because that's exactly what I'm doing right now. I mentioned the open house. The open house, it is surprising how many people we get out at this open house for being so remote. But a lot of people will bring out, solar telescopes and also the regular telescopes, stay overnight. As I said, we make sure that that we hold the open house while the moon's up during the day. So guess what? We have a very, very dark sky at night at the site on our open house. By the way, in the upper left-hand picture, you can see the scaffolding that we climb up to get to the dish. Bottom center picture is our new control room. And one of the local 4-H clubs does lunch for everyone. So everyone gets well fed and well hydrated. In terms of education, we the top picture and going off to the right clockwise was a Science Olympiad seminar that we held from Los Animas. Many of these towns are very underserved in terms of science, and so we're kind of happy that we get to actually bring science to this rural area of Colorado, and we encourage the schools to come and visit us and hear a little bit about our radio telescope. We also judge science fairs. There's picture of Bill Miller, who's in on this call, our vice president. They're in the left most picture. Along with that is public outreach, where we go to most of the ham fests and let people know about our organization. And this last year, we actually, or in 24, we attended the International EME conference that was held in New Jersey. And that's me and Paul Saban, who's in the center, is our president as of about a week ago. And then Alex, who's the radio designer, is on the far right. And I'll just briefly bring this up because if any of you are ARRL members, in your April magazine, you have this cover. And this is the DSES saving a 30-foot dish that was out in very western Colorado. And so you can actually just coincidentally, in conjunction with this presentation, you can go to QST magazine and read about our project for the 30-foot dish rescue that we had. So I'll close here with we have a very, our organization is very active. We actually have 2 meetings every month. We have a engineering meeting the second Monday of the month, and the science meeting where we learn all about pulsars and hydrogen distribution in our galaxy, et cetera, is held on the 4th Monday of the month. The site work trip, the standing schedule of every 3rd Saturday, is kind of a guideline. We have people going down all the time. And so if any of you are going to happen to be in Colorado or passing through the area and you're interested, I would suggest don't plan on that 3rd Saturday, but contact us and we'll see if we can be there for you. If you're interested in joining DSES, we've got, you can go to the website and join. And we have a very active group IO chat area that where we discuss all the experiments and experiments to be throughout the year. I'm going to hold off on questions here because what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch over to just a very fast tour of our site. So this is our entrance as you come in. You can see the dish. Normally it's stowed in what I call the bird bath position. This is you only saw 1 or 2 pictures of the bunker, but this is the doorway to the bunker. This is what I call the Swanson microwave dinner view of our dish. This is at moonrise, where the moon's right on the horizon, and I'm only a few degrees off of the off of axis here, taking this picture. This is our old control room, where Kathy Wildman is here in the foreground doing sideband off the moon, and you can see that pretty much it's just this table. If we turn around, take the picture from the other direction, it's just this table, and then you have the wall again. So we had a very small control room, which made for very interesting times during COVID, where someone would give a little cough and everyone would just pile out of the trailer as fast as they could. But this is our new control room. So we actually have a lot of room here. Again, Paul Saban is in the center, our new president. Big transmitters require big dummy loads, and that's our dummy load down there on the floor, or one of our dummy loads. And this is where we were doing the Earth-Venus-Earth bounce. Unsuccessfully, unfortunately, but this was actually during the process of the bounce. Gives you an idea of what our hub looks like. If you look through the hub, you can see kind of the back end of one of our feeds there. And we had some environmental challenges. After we put the EVE equipment in the hub, we had several severe dust storms down in our area. And when we pulled the cover off the hub, we found out that it was none too well sealed. And so we had to clean that up. And this is after a bit of cleaning. Getting ready for EVE, we were working well into the night. That's me up at the feed on top of the tower. Our checklist before we did the Earth Venus Earth bounce, and this is our E Callisto experiment. So this is one of the radio astronomy experiments that we have set up. We don't have the antenna on here yet, but this is Ray, who's over 80, who still climbs towers, and in this picture, he's at least, I would say, 100 inches above the ground, with a gin pole here, about to raise the upper part of the post. This is a view inside the tower looking up, and then from the top of the tower looking down. And at the top of the tower, there's like a manhole, and if you flip open that lid, you can then climb up on top of the tower, but you're still below the dish, and you get a view like this. So those are the counterweights, which are lead and concrete for the dish. And then to get into the dish itself, you have to climb a ladder. Once you get, by the way, this guy is Mike Parsons. If you look on YouTube under Ham-Solo, kind of like Han Solo, but instead of November, it's Mike Ham Solo. He has a lot of videos on our dish, and this is him letting the adrenaline die down after doing that climb on the ladder. And this is the way we adjust our the position of our hub if it ever gets out of center. And with that, I am done. I ran over a little bit. I apologize for that, but are there any questions about what I covered here, please?
Roger, we can do one question. It's getting a little late here, but
Okay.
Anybody have any questions for Roger? No? I guess we don't. So, thank you very much. That was a really good presentation.
Oh, thank you.
Cool.
All right. And again, Adam, thank you very much for inviting me, and I want to thank the club for letting me prattle on.
Absolutely. All right.
All right. Well, and could I get a copy of you recorded this? If I could get a copy of your recording, I'd appreciate it.
Yes, definitely. Send you a link.
And I will create a PDF of this slide presentation and send that to you.
Great. Thanks. All right. Thanks,
All
Roger.
right. Well, thank you very much.
I think Joe would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Couple of things real quick. Everybody, you've got a link on your table. Let us know what you thought. Fill out your signal report. It's a couple of just a real quick questions. Answer the questions and let us know what you thought about the activity. What you'd like to see more of. And with that, I don't have anything else. And would certainly entertain a motion to adjourn. So moved by Don, seconded by Josh. All right, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Thanks everyone for coming to our membership meeting. Look forward to hearing from you again.